Alright guys, let's hop into it. The brand new rogue build that has emerged out of Season 3 with the most recent update with the Gauntlet. We now have some buffs to Flurry. So, how are the buffs? Well, first off, let's go over what actually changed. So, starting right off, Flurry, its base damage got increased by 10%, and with improved Flurry, we have the X20 increased damage to vulnerable enemies, and then it's going to make everything vulnerable, which it did previously. So basically, what it comes down to, we have base 10% and then another multiplier of X20. So that's basically an additional aspect on top of a base 10%. Now, is that going to make this an absolute S tier build? Right now, at the moment, there is 0 builds on Flurry that are within the top 5. So that said, it still is a fun build to play, and where it would excel is basically open world content and essentially not just doing some sort of a boss. There are much better options for dealing with that, whether it's rapid fire and beastfall boots and like banish swords talisman, which we've dropped a build for, which you can one-shot anything in the game. And there was a massive nerf overall for every single rogue build that was using range because, well, we had this bug with the weapon mastery passive that gave us way more damage than it was supposed to. So a lot of people just kind of want to play something different, and if you are interested in playing Flurry, this is going to be a good time to check it out because it is still pretty good. We're going to start off the gameplay with some Hell Tides, and then we'll move into the Gauntlet gameplay, and the build is still pretty solid even going into the Gauntlet. However, for any of the bosses, I would really recommend picking up a Shrine because Rogue, it's not a Hoda Barb. It doesn't just delete things off the screen in 1 second. So now that we have that out of the way, there are some cool things. So specifically gaining a lot of attack speed because we're going to be using close quarters because, well, it's the only real passive here that is actually like viable in terms of like DPS. We're actually going to be attacking super fast, so siphoning strikes and enhanced Flurry are all going to have some excellent synergy because we're going to be stacking our attack speed to break the cap of 100%. So the game is only supposed to let you technically go to 100% increased attack speed bonus. There are a few things in the game that actually break this. One of them is accelerating, and it's going to be really easy to hit over 100 attack speed. And because we're able to actually heal with not only enhanced Flurry, which can give us up to 12% maximum life per cast, so it's an incredibly tanky build. That's essentially where this build would actually excel. So it's way more tanky than any of the other rogue builds because it heals very, very fast. On top of also getting siphoning strikes, we're able to heal even more. We have a chance it's an unlucky hit, but at the end of the day, you're going to be able to heal instantly. Now, Hell Tides are very easy anyways, but it is something that you do need to do, and it is objectively faster than Twisting Blades because it immediately deals the damage. You don't have to impale the enemy, wait for it to come out, and then start spinning. You could see, I mean, I'm just activating it and it just deletes things instantly, and it's really good for that. Now, you could still do the Gauntlet. Like, I'll show you guys Gauntlet gameplay here in a minute, but it just excels at that. That's where this build would essentially be new, and the whole point of this video is to play a newer build because, well, they did give it several different buffs. So, let's go over the build for it, and I'll teach you guys how to get 100% plus attack speed. It's very easy. Like, you cannot mess this up. So, starting right off, as far as the build goes, let's go over the skills. I'll show you guys how to play it, and then we'll go over the pieces of gear, and then all the passives and all that stuff. So, starting right off with the skills. So we are going to be running Puncture because Puncture is the best. It applies vulnerability, it applies to slow, and it actually activates a marksman skill, which is important for getting a little bit more damage on bosses. And then obviously it's a Flurry build, so we're going to be running Flurry. Then we have Dark Shroud. This is going to give us additional bonus survivability, plus it gives us extra damage with bonus to crit. And then we are running Dash over here just for extra mobility, and then we have Poison Imbuement. Now, we're not really using it for the damage, we're using it for damage reduction as well as attack speed, which technically is kind of damage in a way, but it's more so for survivability. And then Shadow Step to break crowd control. And then for specialization, we are running Combo Points. And then in terms of the skills, basically, I like doing Puncture once or twice, then activating Flurry. Most of the times, if you're just doing like open world content, I'll show you guys like a tier 70, well, technically tier 70 is the equivalent to the Gauntlet, and I'll give you guys Gauntlet gameplay, but this is where the build would excel, because doing Sigil 100 doesn't award you anything special. As long as the monsters in the game are going to be 85 plus, you can get the Uber Uniques, and that's basically what people want, but realistically, you're better off doing Duriel still, even with the most recent buffs. So Flurry over here is excellent for just clearing out content if you want to maybe level up other glyphs, or maybe power level your friends. It's pretty fast. Then we have Dark Shroud for survivability. You just keep this up. Whenever it's up, just activate it. And then Dash just to move out of the way. And then Poison Imbuement, when you can use it, just to activate it. You don't have to specifically wait for bosses because you're just going for it with attack speed. But you can see even when we take damage, our health instantly just will go right back up, and that's because we get to heal so much with this build. And then Shadow Step, if you're frozen, knockdown, whatever. Crowd Control, you activate this, and it'll give you that unstoppable that you will want, and also gives you additional movement speed, which is nice. Then combo points, because we're running Condemnation, it's excellent because it's going to give you a huge bonus on Flurry, giving you that 45% attack speed with 3 combo points is what it will do. So as far as the equipment goes, Manglers, this is going to give us extra crit, and then we're looking to eventually get one sort of piece of resistances on a few different pieces of gear, except for cold, because we're going to be running the Penitent Greaves. These will give us cold res, plus it'll apply the crowd control, the chill on the enemies, and it'll also give us extra damage. It actually did also receive another buff. It got a 50% increased damage buff, because it used to be 10% as the highest roll, and now it is an additional 5%. So it's a 50% damage bonus from like the base stats of the Penitent Greaves. So that was something else that got buffed. So this will have cold resistance, so you don't need to get cold res, but try to get one piece of resistance anywhere that you can on pieces of gear to just max out resistances, because we're going to be running a lot of aspects, and there are a few uniques in here. And Grasp of Shadows is optional here. Don't worry if you don't happen to have it, but the Penitent Greaves, you can actually play without these. Your pet, the Seneschal, can also apply the chill, and that will allow you to essentially have that without requiring Penitent Greaves. But I really like Penitent Greaves plus Umbral because it just gives you essentially infinite energy. You can see my energy just doesn't really go down too often, and when it does, it instantly goes back up. That's because Penitent Greaves plus the chill, and then on top of having the Manglers with the aspect of the Umbral, when you actually crowd control an enemy, you just restore a resource. That's how we have infinite resource, so to speak. But yeah, Manglers is excellent on your helmet. You can get cooldown reduction, you get extra energy, armor. Any defensive stat is really good, but getting maximum life is really key on Flurry builds because you want to have that huge amount of HP that you can just instantly recover really, really fast. And then running Juggernaut's aspect over here. That's basically in every build. And then you can run Grasp of Shadow or a regular pair of gloves. On a regular pair of gloves, you can get ranks to Flurry, crit strike chance, and attack speed. Those are the 3 main stats that you want. If you get dexterity, all stats, or like extra attack speed after you dodge, it doesn't really matter. The one on number 2 right here doesn't really matter. It's just Flurry, crit chance, and attack speed is what you're going for. And then we're running Cheats aspect over here, or Tybalt. It's up to you what you want to run. Just know that if you run Tybalt, don't expect to really get Sigil 100 done super smoothly unless you have like really GG pieces of gear, because you want to also max out your resistances. So Tybalt's though, if you do run it, Shadow Step is excellent for just keeping that upkeep, but you don't need the Tybalt's for resources because this build doesn't have problems with resource at all. But if you can run Grasp of Shadows, that's okay too. I just like it. It's just a really nice pair of gloves because it can give you +6 to your ranks of all of your core skills, which is awesome. And then for the pants, again, running Cheats aspect over here. You can also run Undying because that will also heal you up very, very fast. So that's another like option. It's a new vampiric power, but I like Cheats overall a little bit more just to prevent like any sort of one-shots. And then Penitent Greaves are excellent because we're going to be scaling crowd control in this build because it's part of the close quarters passive. So Penitent Greaves are excellent to activate those. And then we have over here Encircling Blades. You can also put Accelerating if you want even more attack speed. You can go for it, but I felt like this was enough attack speed. About 120 is what you want to try to shoot for, which is super easy. You legit can't mess that up. But if you want to, technically you can go into like over 150%, but that would require you to lose a little bit of damage, but you get more attack speed, so it kind of is damage anyway. So it's up to you what happens to maybe even roll better. But I like putting this on my crossbow, and you do want a crossbow because damage distance, well, you're going to be close up anyways. But Dex, all stats, core skill damage, damage crowd control. Ideally, the main thing that you want is getting all stats as well as Dex and crowd control. The last stat, as long as you can use it, can be damage to close, poison, whatever the case may be. And then for our amulet, we are running the Edge Masters because we have so much good resource here. Let me go and actually give you guys some Gauntlet gameplay over here. Oh, yeah, actually, yeah, there we go. So we got some Gauntlet gameplay. And then for the amulet, you can get Frigid Finesse is going to give you the most damage. You used to want Weapon Mastery. If you still have that, that's totally fine. Don't worry too much about it. But movement speed, energy cost reduction are the stats that I really like to see on it. Cooldown reduction isn't really required for this build. All it's going to give you is a little bit more Poison Imbuement and Dark Shroud uptime. And this is only really utilized for damage reduction anyway. So don't worry too much about cooldown reduction. But if you can get it on your helmet and stuff, it's not like a bad stat by any means. But it's just not a huge priority for this build. But yeah, Edge Masters is great. You can see our resource over here. And then we're running Vengeful. This is going to give us additional crit. Additional crit means more heals, and of course procking Accelerating, so it's great for that. Then Umbra over here, again, that's how we have basically infinite resource. Try not to fight any of the bosses without shrines though, just as a heads up, as you guys are seeing some of the Gauntlet gameplay. And then, again, Accelerating over here, this is what breaks the cap. So there are a few things in this game that break the cap limit of 100% increased bonus attack speed, which I've already showed you guys over here. Mine, I happen to have 127. You can actually get like 130-ish with my gear if it was a little bit better. But if you really wanted to push it, you could get it to over 150. We are actually missing 25 if we were to throw on the two-hander, because it doubles the stats over there. Then Condemnations is great because it's going to instantly give you all of the bonuses immediately. So I like to use Puncture 1 to 2 times, and then I use Condemnation to actually just proc, and hopefully, because it's a 30% chance each time, and that will give you bonuses. And then when we use a marksman skill, our next cutthroat skill will do more damage, so weaving them in between really feels good. But if you're doing lower tier content, you can legit just spam on your flurry and you'll be a-okay. But pretty much the same things that you're looking for on the crossbow, which is going to be all stats, dex, crowd control, and core skill. It does not matter in this case if you're running a sword or a dagger. It's kind of up to you, what do you want to run. Ideally dagger is totally fine in this, unless you have like really good crit, and overall it's not that big of a deal because the difference in damage is whatever rolls higher. It's because you used to have a multiplier in crit and that no longer exists, so daggers or swords are totally fine. As far as the seneschal, I like a flash of adrenaline, duration, tactical, fortify, and then tempest. You can run efficiency, resource shen if you want. There's a lot of different options here, and if you want to run frigid, that's totally fine. And also, if you want to play this on non-season, that's totally fine. You can do it. The pet doesn't like activate anything that's important. It's only important if you do not want to run Penitent Greaves. If you don't reach your resistance caps, get a pair of boots. It has 3 resistances, and then if you want to get movement speed, that's what I would suggest. And then you can just run the pet to apply the frigid support, therefore activating your chill. As far as the gems go, Emerald, Ruby, and then Diamonds is pretty much on every build. There's a couple notes here if you guys want to read how to get like all of the attack speed bonuses over here. And there's like the gameplay loop of like kind of what you do over here that are optional things. If you want to swap certain pieces of gear, again, you can run Tobalt, you can run Godslayer. Just get your resistances and other aspects and other pieces of gear. Like you may want to throw Manglers in a different area if you want to run regular pair of gloves instead of Grasp of Shadow. And now that we went over the gear, let's go over the skills. So we'll have all this down below, but pretty much just puncture. You want to make sure you get fundamental puncture. Then we're going to get the flurry that deals a little bit more damage. Also picking up siphoning as well as sturdy. As far as Shadow Step, if you want to run Tobalt, I really do like Disciplined Shadow Step because it reduces the cooldown. Therefore, you can keep on spamming it, so it does feel quite good. And then over here, this is important because we're running Manglers. You want to put 1 point into Tricks attacks and then 3 points into Concussive. This actually should receive a buff. So now how it works is it will give you just that bonus to 12% for all the targets that you hit versus just the enemy that is knocked down. So this one got a nice little buff I would say, I think this was in the beginning of the season. This is not part of the most recent update. But then we got Dark Shroud over here, and you get increased movement speed if you're doing open world content, but if you want the extra crit, that's totally fine too. It's up to you on that one. Ideally, you try to get 50% crit. There's also another bonus 8% here if you're doing bosses, but again, this build isn't really meant for bosses. You could do equip, weapon swap, or little swap if you want to run like elements, and then also run Beastfall Boots, Banner Swords, Talisman, just like I did in the Rogue build that could one-shot anything in the game, which I'll also link down below because it's basically similar to it. I mean, if you played that build, there's only a few small tweaks that you got to do in the Paragon board here for this build. And then if you happen to roll like Poison Imbuement on one of your pieces of gear, like in your helm, then you don't even have to put a point into it. We're not doing poison for the damage. We're actually just doing it for the poison enemies deal less damage, as well as gaining extra attack speed, because this build is all about going as fast as possible. And then since we chill everything, Frigid Finesse is one of the best things in the entire game. No ultimate because it's kind of pointless here. If you do want to put points into Second Wind as well as Innervation, I don't think this is a bad option either, just to increase your lucky hit chance if you want to proc more on like any siphoning strikes or something like that. And then haste over here, and then obviously close quarters combat, one of the best things in the game, but it did get nerfed this season at the start, and then everyone was running precision. But the point of this is a brand new build, so that's what we got over here. And then moving into the Paragon board. So here are going to be the Paragon nodes. So we're running Closer, Control, Turf, Combat, as well as Exploit. So starting off on the very first board over here, we're going to be getting Closer. and that is the first starter board. And then for the second board, we're getting exploit weakness, and then we are getting control. We're also going to be picking up exploit weakness because whenever we deal damage to a vulnerable enemy, they're going to take more and more damage. And because this build attacks so dang fast, you're going to see like it just absolutely just deletes things very, very fast, even in the gauntlet. In fact, this gauntlet is actually multiplayer gameplay, so the stuff actually has even more HP. So if you're doing it solo, you're gonna be even faster. So this just stacks it up really, really fast. So that's on the second one over here, and the order does matter, by the way. Cunning Stratagem, Turf over here. This is why it does matter, because you want the extra core skill damage. Also, reaching the extra bonuses for the resistance over here. It's quite nice to grab. And then we are going to be moving into Tricks of the Trade and Combat, and getting the Tricks of the Trade legendary node over there as well. And then on the final board, it is Cheap Shot and Exploit, so we're going to be able to deal more damage to crowd control, because, well, we have the ability to crowd control permanently. And some of the enemies, you will see that they will just get like dazed, and they're going to be permanently dazed. Like they just keep on getting hit into the ground again and again. There is some threshold where like the enemy, like you see that one's knocked down and it might get back up and it gets knocked down again. It'll happen. But there is some threshold where the enemy gets knocked down too many times and it just doesn't work anymore. But it is a form of another survivability, plus it is more damage. But yeah, on the last one, Cheap Shot and then Exploit, because, well, Exploit is excellent. Even though we could just hit the enemy once with Puncture and then Flurry will apply it to everyone, it's totally fine because it's a pretty decent one anyways. But if you did want to run Chip, that is another option here, and in theory, it would give you more damage. It's up to you what you want to run. I just like having Exploit because it just applies it instantly, and then you could just basically activate Flurry once, and it'll apply on the first hit, because Flurry actually hits 4 different times, and that's kind of how it works. But yeah, massive amount of attack speed. That is pretty much the point of the build, and that is going to wrap things up. But if you guys have any suggestions, let me know down below, and we will be dropping another follow-up, perhaps to another build, because I kind of want to mess around with some of the newer aspects. But if you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn the bell if you'd like to see more Diablo and more action RPG content, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. And the build will also be in the pinned comment, in case you guys want to. Peace out.